Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy holiday season to join us for today's session. Today, we plan to look at how you can accelerate your OneStream Power BI journey with QuickLaunch for OneStream. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items that I'd like to call out. Let's see, recording and slides will be made available to you all after we wrap up today. And then we will also have a Q&A at the end of today's presentation and demo. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A panel. For today's agenda, we plan to cover the different approaches and challenges when connecting OneStream to Power BI. What is QuickLaunch for OneStream? How it works. We then plan to showcase an interactive demo. We'll follow that demonstration up with an implementation process overview. And then we'll wrap up in time for questions. Hopefully that sounds like a plan. Now, I do think it's fair, before we jump into the content being covered today, I quickly showcase those responsible for putting on today's session, as well as supporting the QuickLaunch for OneStream solution. We have Ben Harrison, our VP of Product Management, Marla Nelson, our CTO, and last and definitely least out of this group, myself, Ethan Alsip, the VP of Sales. Here at Preferred Strategies, we're an enterprise analytics provider that operates as an extension of your data team. We've been around since 2002, and over the last 23 years, we've helped hundreds of customers bridge the gap between complex corporate systems such as ERP and EPM applications, as well as the leading analytics and BI technologies. We're committed to helping our customers continue to advance their data and analytics journey, because it is just that, a journey and an ongoing process. Now, speaking of the data and analytics journey, I think the following visual does an amazing job of highlighting where most organizations find themselves in that journey. And I don't want to spend too much time here, but I do think it's important that as a company, if you're looking to remain competitive, you must honestly evaluate where you fall from a data maturity perspective in order to really develop and implement an effective strategy that leads to making data-driven decisions. Now, since some companies that we might consider to, let's say, be in that data-aware category, are currently using inefficient and slower processes of like taking Excel exports or REST APIs to get their OneStream data into Power BI. We can provide a more secure and faster way to boost their productivity. Now, if we move up in that data maturity scale to, let's say, data proficient, perhaps a data analyst utilizes the OneStream connector to build a Power BI data set for one department. But this is going to lead to data silos. So how do you relate different business areas for a full picture? How do you standardize on consistent business logic? Or how do you secure and govern the data effectively? The answer is through an enterprise approach, which QuickLaunch for OneStream delivers. Centralized, optimized, secure, and a methodology that builds trust across your organization. Seems pretty logical. But the question is, why isn't everybody doing it? Well, the answer is, it's hard. It's really hard. And I promise I'm not going to read line by line on this slide, but I do think that it does a great job showcasing even just a snapshot of the expertise needed in both Power BI and OneStream to develop and support a data-driven enterprise approach to visualizing your OneStream data with Power BI. And while everyone else isn't doing it, here at Preferred Strategies, we are, and we're doing it with our QuickLaunch for OneStream solution. So what is QuickLaunch for OneStream? Well, QuickLaunch is a complement to and an accelerator of the Power BI connector. Since it does require the connector, you must be on OneStream SaaS version 8.2 or higher. QuickLaunch for OneStream is a pre-built data model that can be configured and installed quickly in as little as 6 weeks. It can also be expanded with customer-specific measures or other data such as ERP or CRM data. providing benefits to partners and customers with quick time to value and reduced report development cycles. So how does QuickLaunch for OneStream work? Well, configuration starts in OneStream with the customer licensing the Power BI connector. We install custom data adapters and build a text tag specifically built to easily integrate for the QuickLaunch data model. The QuickLaunch data model leverages financial intelligence, local and consolidated reporting, and entity-based dynamic row-level security to easily create visualizations to analyze corporate performance accurately, providing business-ready Power BI reports, Excel templates, and optional income statements and balance sheets for even quicker insights. So, what are the benefits of QuickLaunch for OneStream to you and your customers? Well, reduced report development cycles. QuickLaunch customers see up to a 70% reduction in report development times. A centralized data model to provide governance, security, and a single source of truth. QuickLaunch for OneStream also allows you to incorporate other data sources and focus your time on analyzing all of your data for improved business outcomes. Time to value. Our customers have experienced 10 times faster implementation than the average do-it-yourself solution build. And then last but not least, a proven methodology and QuickLaunch community for continued Power BI and OneStream support. Now that we've seen quite a few slides, why don't I pass it over to Ben so we can actually see QuickLaunch in action?
Oh, thank you, Ethan. I'm looking forward to doing this. I get excited sometimes when I start, showing our product because I'm pretty excited about what it can do for your company. I'm going to be doing this and doing this demo in a couple different perspectives. One is maybe the perspective as a consumer. Maybe I'm pretending right now I'm the VP of Finance and I want to start, using Power BI to investigate, my company and see where we're at. And then later on, I'm going to switch over to someone who's going to be creating content for the consumers. So I'm right now in the Power BI service. Hopefully, you know a little bit about Power BI if you are coming to this webinar. But Power BI has multiple components. It's got a desktop tool where you usually create reports. It's got a service where you publish those reports for people to consume. From the service, you can get to the data via web browser, which is what I'm doing right now, or even from your phone, so it's mobile.
Can you share your screen?
Oh, thank you. I didn't click the actual share.
There you go.
I apologize. So I thank you, Marla. I'm in the Power BI service now, and that's where I'm going to be mostly as we do the demo today. So if I was a VP of Finance, I might come into this, summary report and look and see, well, so far revenue-wise, I'm looking pretty good. Happy with that result, better than last year. Gross profit's good, but right away I can see I've got a gross profit issue, gross profit percent issue, and this is where the interactivity of Power BI is going to be very useful to me. I do remember or want to point out that in my model, in the QuickLaunch data model, there's these calendar functions. So I've got period here, and I remember 6 months ago when I was looking at this report, I was in a good shape gross profit wise. So something's happened in the last 12 months that I'm going to want to understand further to kind of get down to what's happening. Looking further across some of the slicers and dicers before we get into some of the visualizations. One of the things I might want to start looking at is the hierarchies. So, the products I'm selling, maybe I want to understand, is this in the computers? If it's in computers, maybe is it some sub part of the computer? So one way to slice and dice through your data is through these hierarchies and using a traditional drop-down filter. I might be looking at maybe parts and service and making other changes to it. But that interactive where I can select and slice and dice is really important if you're trying to start to figure out how do I get down to what is my issue with my gross profit. Another thing I might care about is, because I know that this problem seems to be in the last half of the year, I might want to start isolating the time period and start looking at quarter to date, or even eventually month to date. As I do that, I do get some more granularity here. So the QuickLaunch data model with this calendaring function allows me to quickly slice through these time-based filters to start looking for things that stand out. And I do notice down here in the public sector, okay, that's a significant decrease in my gross profit. So the first thing I might want to do is drill down on public sector and see what components of it. And it in fact is in the computer product level. Eventually, I might have had more hierarchies here to drill down, but just as I could have drilled through the product hierarchy here, I've filtered here in the visualizations. That's another thing that we like to point out with Power BI is the ability to start doing cross-filtering at the visual level in addition to cross-filtering at the slicer level. Ultimately, though, I want to know why. What's happening in the computer world? So I can drill down through the details. This is a really important part of what we're doing with QuickLaunch. We're not providing summarized data to the data model that's running that blue cube that Ethan mentioned. We're providing detailed data. So anytime you're looking at a summarized data point and saying, what's going on there, you don't need to run another report. You're going to just drill down until eventually you get the transaction details to say, aha, here's what's happening in that segment or that product group or that market area. This gives answers to the questions, it validates the numbers, and it really gives you the aha moments at the detail level. The details also, in my mind, provide the foundation so that you can trust the data, right? The question people have often asked us is, how do I know this report's right? Well, in the QuickLaunch world, you know it's right because you can actually drill down through and to the details to say, yep, that's that transaction. The things we find is, oh, I forgot to reverse it, some sort of journal entry, or if someone mischarged or miscoded some data. This is the analysis that's going to help you understand what happened in your business. So again, as this CFO, I get this really big view that allows me to draw down to the details, but there's other ways to look at that data. And it might be through a traditional KPI. If I'm considering the health of my company, there's certain big metrics that matter to everybody. They're common across industry: current ratios, quick ratios, days receivable. All of these things are important to know, to understand and track, to understand the health of the company. So maybe I'm happy with my days receivable. It's green, but I remember it was it was worse before. So besides just the single number that's maybe looking at the current days receivable versus a prior year days receivable, you should be able to drill into that and understand that trend over time. So in this case, I'm looking at my days receivable from the plan versus the actual. I'm looking to see, according to, in this case, I'm much better than my plan. Now, my plan was a little bit absurd. If you think of 241 days, no one would plan that. But the point is that that's a trend that I can see. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? How long has it been getting better? How long has it been getting worse? And besides the ratio, I have the inputs to that. So, days receivable is really just net sales divided by accounts receivable. If there's a problem in it, if it's getting better or worse, it's coming from one or the other or both. And this gives me the kind of the bigger picture of what's happening in these key metrics that, again, are essential to me as the CFO to understanding, what's going on. Eventually, the CEO is going to ask me questions, and I want to be able to have the answers to that. So that's part of that idea of QuickLaunch. We have these out-of-the-box reports. I won't go through all of them. There's a lot more to consider, in terms of how you might look at revenue. I've used this expenses one a lot, using a waterfall chart to drill down to look at variance of expenses. And these out-of-the-box reports are a really good way to get started. All of our customers take them and modify them and make them their own. It's one of the natures of this content. It's a good starting place, but you're going to want to tweak them and add them. The QuickLaunch gets you a long, long way down the road, though, so that you're up and running and getting insights sooner than you would ever be possible otherwise. I'm going to start to kind of switch hats now and think of, how do I create this content? We're looking at how people might consume this data, but to start talking about the content creation, I want to think about the data model itself and what's happening in there. So what QuickLaunch is doing is it's replicating some of the OneStream hierarchies and logics, and including the sort order of those hierarchies, so that Power BI can provide data that is what you're in ways and orders that make sense to you based upon your use in OneStream. You notice there we have 900 measures out of the box. Those are methodically built so that you're going to be able to expand on them and continue to create new value as time goes on. So the measures are important. The numbers, the facts represented by this big dot in the center, those are sliced and diced by all these dimensions around it. Well, that means that part of that is then this ability to partition that data, and the partitioning of the data in the fact table by either fiscal period or by scenario makes it ability to refresh parts of that data in small bits. That's important at like month-end close. Many of our customers using OneStream have hundreds of millions of rows of data in that data set. And you don't want to have to refresh a couple 100 million rows of data. You might only need to refresh 50,000 rows of data. So partitioning of that is a real important part of QuickLaunch so that it becomes very useful and becomes the tool that is the go-to place, the Bible for where are my finances at, that govern source of truth that we mentioned before. Data governance is one of the foundational elements that QuickLaunch is going to bring to this table. What that means is if I'm over creating a report, and I need to shrink up some of my numbers here, and I create a report where I may be referring to actual inception to date, and Ethan creates a report using actual inception to date. This is one version of that data. His report and my report, if we filter for the same period and same content, will be identical because, again, it's governed as one version of the truth. So how did we start creating reports? I'm just going to go ahead and start dragging in some data. In fact, I'll go ahead and pick actual amount inception to date. And with that, then I don't want to be a bar chart. I'm going to show it as a matrix right now. So I'm going to switch the visualization. And I might want to look at that by entity hierarchy. So I'll go to my entity hierarchy and I'll say, let's just bring that in. And what I have now is I filtered to a specific entity and I didn't need to do that. So I've changed my filter up there and now I can see all my entities. This is really an important concept also. Entities are not necessarily additive, but they have different components that might be shared. So part of our model is that this entity is going to display its total, even if some of the components of that entity are also included in a different entity. So entities are kind of central to the reporting, the analytics. They're the kind of the foundation of how you start slicing and dicing data across your OneStream data set and QuickLaunch. So very powerful, as I mentioned, very useful in the same order that you'd see it there in OneStream. But what if I wanted to really dig into a single entity? And I'm going to go back to this total PAOS one, and I'll get there by just doing TOT to kind of cross filter and get quickly pick that entity. What I can do now is maybe get rid of the entity hierarchy, and I want to replace it with the account hierarchy. So if I do that and bring that in as well, now I've got this account hierarchy that lets me start looking through that specific entity, their financial accounts, the financial statements. These are, again, our balance sheet hierarchy. You might have a net income hierarchy. And this is where you get the power of starting to get those hierarchies in use for me as I'm doing these reports. They're just all pre-built and preset. I didn't need to worry about relationships. It's just creating content is much easier. Besides this maybe is actually data you could see in OneStream. What you want to start doing is looking at this data over time. So I'm going to go ahead and make a line chart now. And went down there, I'll put it up here so it's a little bit bigger. We can see more of it. And if I was going to start thinking about data over time, maybe I'm interested in EBITDA. So let me go to my fact table. I'm going to look at my account measures. So I have an EBITDA filter here. I'll close up my actual just to save some space. And maybe I'm looking at EBITDA actual amount, and I've got all these elements. This is that time-based, month to date, quarter date, year to date. One of the ways we make it flexible is creating this idea of a selected EBITDA. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that in. I'll put that on my y-axis. And maybe I care about my plan. So I'm going to go to my EBITDA actual plan selected. And just while I'm looking at these, there's another one I want to put in here. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in depth. But while I'm going through this list, I'm just going to scroll down and bring in my EBITDA variance actual to plan selected. And I'll bring that in. And I'm going to put that instead of in the x-axis, I'm going to put it as a tooltip. And I'll show you why I do that in just a minute. Well, these are just dots on the screen. They're not a line. And the reason that is I need, a period here in the x-axis. I've picked already 2023. So the way to find that maybe quickly is just type in period. And I say, well, okay, period is what I'm looking for into the calendar table. Here's my fiscal period. So I might put that as my x-axis. And right away, I have now a line chart of it on month to date. I might switch that back to year to date and start looking at that data in those ways. So maybe I want to look at maybe my working budget as well. And now I've got a line chart that shows my working budget year to date for 2023. And if I hover over that data, I got the light blue dot, which is the actual amount, and I've got the dark blue dot, which is the plan amount. And then I have in there in the tooltip this variance amount actual plan to selected. And that's really nice. It gives context to that. That's really nice also in waterfall charts. We'll talk about in a minute. But you can see as a content creator, the QuickLaunch data model makes it really simple for me to come in and really start making content quickly. I think Ethan mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation, our customers find that they're about 70% faster in creating reports than they would be if they had to try to start from scratch. So much quicker time to insight. I want to do another chart here as well. I'm going to look at a waterfall chart. And I've really, since coming to work at Preferred Strategies, gotten to appreciate the power of waterfall charts. Waterfall charts are perfect to look at variance amounts. And I can't seem to grab this one here. Let me grab it there. Sometimes computers don't do what you want them to do, at least for me. So here I've got my waterfall chart kind of put on the page where I'm going to want it. And the things I want to start looking at, maybe back into EBITDA, is digging into that estimated versus actual, the actual to plan on EBITDA. So I'm going to go back to my EBITDA actual to plan measure, and I want to start understanding that variance a little bit more. So actual to plan to select is there. I'll go ahead and drop that into my x-axis. That's the number. I'm sorry. Yeah, the x-axis. Now I don't have any data there right now, and that's because I haven't told it what to break that down by. I need to give it some category here. So into the model, we've got all these UD hierarchies. These are the UD hierarchies that are currently in your OneStream system. We've brought them in here and coded them using text tags. Most of our customers are going to rename these to be the what they represent. I'm going to look right away at UD level 3, level 4. So I'm going to go to UD hierarchy and look at UD levels. I'm going to use and bring in level 3 and add that as a category. And right away I get some data that's nice. While I'm in here, I'll go ahead and bring in level 5 just to show you what the drill down is. This is where you saw me drilling down earlier. This is how easy it is to create drill down capabilities. You just put one layer on, another layer, and now I've got a drill down functionality. I'm going to sort this separately. I like to sort it by EBITDA. And here I've got my data, waterfall chart with the variance very quickly identified. So maybe I want to look at a different plan or different scenario. So again, I can go back to say, well, what was the management budget? You can see I do get some different data here. Maybe I want to look at the variance over month to date again. And now I'm going to say, well, what's happening with EMEA International? Like before, because within the model, we have the details. And I've already previously set up a drill down page down here in the left corner. I should be able to come here and right click and say, if I right click on the right spot, it's small for me, so I apologize. I'm not able to get it here. I'm going to go back to year to date and just demonstrate that because I'm not getting my mouse to work. So drill down, and again, drill through is going to get you to the data you want to see. Again, in every case, the answer to what you're looking for is going to be somewhere down in the details. The aha moment is going to be realized because it's easy to get down to the answers that you're looking for. So hopefully this makes sense. It's not difficult to start making these types of report. Real challenge is to understand how do you want to present this information in a way that is going to be compelling and tell a story that lets people learn themselves, consume this well. So another way that I think really powerful within the Power BI world is with it's a Q&A and a decomposition tree. So I'm going to move on to the next tab and start making something a little bit different. So within Power BI, there's natural language query, natural language processing. So if I click this visual Q&A, it kind of comes up here and says, ask a question about your data. Now I could type this out for you, but you would then see that I'm a really lousy typist. So I'm just going to copy and paste this from a notepad I have here. I'm just saying, okay, I would like to get the gross profit actual selected by UD level 2, and I want to show it as a bar chart. Pretty straightforward, real simple, but it's that easy to start making content, right? So you can start navigating in and digging into this data and start exploring different ways to see the data without even knowing a lot about it, right? I didn't need to go find where gross profit actual was. I just thought, well, I want gross profit. And again, the natural language query gives me that return of the data. If I like this data, it's as easy to say, come up here and say, I'd like to just turn this into standard visual. So I'm taking the Q&A visual and I'm turning it into a standard visual, which is that bar chart. Power BI's got a lot of really neat visualizations that are possible to explore. It's fun to do that, but one of the ones I really want to highlight here is this decomposition tree. Decomposition trees are something that it's a root cause analysis. It's an ability to say, I want to understand my gross profit actual. I want to understand it by different ways. But this is like a choose your own adventure. So if I come back here and expand my UD2 levels again, and I put level 5 underneath there. So I've got my UD2, that's the product table, or it's the region table, or whatever the hierarchy is that we'll rename when we install it for you. But I might mix and match that hierarchy with a different hierarchy. So if I go to UD3 and say, well, let's give me UD3 level 4. Okay, so I can bring that in here as well. And what that means is that because I've created this hierarchy here, I can explain gross profit by any of those in any order I want to. So if I come in here, I say, well, let's start with UD level 4, and I'm going to then get that insight. I can say, well, parts and service, I already knew that was doing really well. Computers is what I'm concerned about. So let's go ahead and explain that. I'm going to look at the next level. But this type of visualization is, oh, look, there's the public sector. This is the type of data that I'm using to dig into it. But it's a very intuitive way. Once you've learned it the first time, when you first look at it, it's not as obvious. But once you started using it, it means that if I'm at this visualization drilling down, I'm looking at this way. But I could as easily swap those and said, look at level 4 first, and then to go look at level 5 maybe. So it's I do like to call it, it's like the choose your own adventure way of slicing and dicing into your data to get those insights that are going to give you the aha moments that help you make adjustments to your business plan. So last thing I want to show here in this kind of Power BI version or look at it is that most of our customers are not only using one source of data, whether it's ERP system or in this case OneStream. There's OneStream and something else. So within the model, once it's built up, you can actually bring in other data. So I'm going to just type in pipeline data, and I'm going to go ahead and click in here a matrix table or a table and say, okay, give me my pipeline amount. Now, the nature of this pipeline amount is this coming from Salesforce. It's not coming from OneStream, but I can actually then show the Salesforce data and I can actually merge that. So I'm actually, what here I've got is the revenue out of OneStream and the pipeline out of Salesforce into one single number. So again, very powerful as you start thinking about what's possible there. But because it's part of my model and I've created the relationships here, I can actually go through and say, well, let's bring in the, I want to go back to UD level 2 and bring in that hierarchy. Let's look at level 4 again and say, put that at the top. So my OneStream data merged with Salesforce data, merged with the combined OneStream and Salesforce data, becomes very, very powerful in terms of extending what you do with your OneStream data. A couple more things to point out here before I'm going to jump over to Excel in just a minute. But we're in this Power BI world, and that's Microsoft. And so there's so much you can do in this area when you're talking about setting up alerts, setting up subscriptions. So if you're in a report, I'm going to go ahead and save this report. I can subscribe to reports. I can set up alerts. And this makes then that extension of Power BI so much more useful that you can automatically get alerts on your phone. You can get subscriptions. You can actually start exporting and analyzing this in Excel, which is where I'm going to go to next. It can work with it in Teams. So getting your OneStream data into the Microsoft ecosystem, it adds all sorts of functionality to what's possible with your reports. I've done some extensive reports, and I don't have it prepared today, but for mobile devices, getting this information into your phones or your tablets, again, is something that Power BI is doing well for you. We love Power BI, but Power BI without a governed data set is just another thousand reports to take care of and manage. So let me jump over to Excel. I mentioned that you can export this to data to Excel. And the point about this is if I'm in Excel, and here I've got connected to that same data set. And when I mean the same data set, I do mean literally the same data set. This is not a copy of the data. This is not data that's been downloaded into Excel. This is data that's in that model. And so, I've pre-built some stuff in here just so you don't have to watch me drag and drop. But that means that in the model, if I come to like the fiscal period and I say, well, what's that by quarter? What's that data by quarter? It's just a matter of bringing in quarter. And my model went to sleep, so I just need to do it twice. The first error was saying, hey, I've gone to sleep. So I can bring in this data now as I wake up the processing tool. And here's my data by quarter. So very quick, very simple, very easy to use Excel for what it does best. Excel is fabulous at slicing and dicing and analyzing. People in the finance world have been using Excel for literally decades. And so the idea that I can use Excel for what it does well against that governed data set really makes a powerful solution when you think about that single blue cube, that single semantic model that is feeding your analytics. If I wasn't interested in quarter, maybe another feature of the model is the idea of currency conversion. Now, the currency is already converted in OneStream. So we're not doing currency conversion here, but OneStream's got the local currency and the consolidated currency. And so we can show and display both of those. So, if it's a, US entity, they're going to be the same number. But if I go look at, maybe a Latin American entity, I can see that I have a dollar summary and I've got the local currency here side by side. And that becomes something you can easily set up to toggle between So you're not looking at just one currency or the other. There's times when you might want to see both, and that's just part of the data model as well. We could show you a lot more things in Excel, but I do want to get back to the where we started just a little bit ago and talk about other features that are important to consider. So let me jump back to my the service, and I'm going to go back to this app. So we talked about, kind of how consuming data, but this is a kind of just an end highlight of what is it that we're talking about, and what does QuickLaunch bring to the table? We've already talked about entities, and how they are not necessarily, they don't all roll up, but they're non. Um, then you need to be able to slice and dice and view those. We talked about currency conversion. We've looked at kind of the account hierarchy. We've covered the UD filtering. Again, that those will be named for whatever you're using those UD tables for. We'll rename them to match that. We've looked about actual versus plan, but this is one thing we haven't seen yet: is scenario 1 versus scenario 2. So what this is in those initial measures where I was saying, show me actual versus plan, you're stuck to actual versus, forecast or working budget or plan. But in this scenario 1 versus 2, we're able to choose both of those. So certainly I could have come back and said, well, just show me actual versus something, but I might want to say, show me working versus management budget or versus forecast. And this idea now is that I'm going to be able to do any comparison I want across two scenarios. Again, greatly extend something that just those 900 measures just automatically take care of this. Built into it, I hadn't mentioned it yet before, but the idea of the GL sign display in OneStream, data stored with a certain display. Sometimes you want to see that as a GL. Revenues are going to be negative and costs are usually going to be positive. So the idea I can toggle between the sign display really quickly. And the last thing I wanted to mention before Ethan, I hand it back to you, is the idea of aggregation weights. Aggregation weights are a fascinating and a unique, I think, OneStream concept that becomes quite tricky to apply and make work in a Power BI world. So that's another thing we've solved with QuickLaunch. And in that case, what we're saying is usually a aggregation weight might be either 1 and -1, but that can actually be anything that's non-zero. And what we're saying here is, do you want to apply aggregation weights to certain calculations or not? And this is where you can come in and apply that and say, yes, have the aggregation weights apply, or no, they don't. They're not widely used, but when they are used, they're very important. And the idea that we've built that into our QuickLaunch solution really gets you a long way to do something that otherwise is quite complex. Ethan, that kind of rounds up what I was hoping to show on the demo-wise today. I know that you wanted to move back to look at kind of the implementation timeline.
Absolutely, absolutely. So hopefully I'm going to be sharing my screen and everybody can see it. Let's see. So let's talk about implementation. So Ben, appreciate you taking the time to walk through the live demonstration, but I just wanted to take a minute or two to really discuss what an implementation of QuickLaunch for OneStream really looks like. So, because we install Power BI over the top of your OneStream application, we want to make sure you have a deployed or a live application before we actually start development. Any subsequent, additions to your production OneStream application, of course, is automatically going to be picked up by Power BI without any, rework required. I think it's also important to note that QuickLaunch for OneStream projects are very low touch for customers because it's a pre-built solution. The consultants do about 85% of the work while the customer contributes only about 15%. And the first step in the process, which I know is everyone's favorite, is the contract cycle. But after we wrap this up, we actually get to the fun stuff. And really, there's 5 main steps to get QuickLaunch for OneStream up and running. We start with access and infrastructure. when you will procure and install the Power BI connector from OneStream. Keep in mind the QuickLaunch solution leverages Power BI premium workspaces, which could be either premium per user or fabric capacity. We then do the installation and configuration, and during this phase, we'll guide you on, how to update the metadata member, text tags, and collaborate to define and, really architect the dynamic row level security, typically based on entity. Once that's complete, we'll pull the customer into solution preview meetings for a few demos and gather feedback on any required adjustments. And once everything looks good, we'll turn it over to the customer for some final validations and sign off. Lastly, and of course not least, we do an admin knowledge transfer session along with an admin guide for your data model administrator. The Power BI report designer training will be provided to various user groups, and then we'll be ready to actually launch the product into production. Now, to wrap up today, there are a few takeaways that I think are key to keep in mind. QuickLaunch helps bring OneStream application intelligence to life in Power BI. Having an enterprise-ready centralized data model accelerates OneStream Power BI initiatives. And preferred strategies with QuickLaunch for OneStream acts as that extension of your data team committed to supporting your analytics journey. And before we hop over to Q&A, I did want to highlight some of the upcoming online events that we have scheduled in case you're interested. So we do have Mastering Power BI Fundamentals. It's a hands-on workshop to build interactive reports for OneStream. And this is from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Tuesday, February 11th. And now I think it's time for questions. So I'm actually going to pass it over to Marla.
Well, I'm kind of monitoring the question, so I did have one in here, and Marla, I'd appreciate if you take it. Can you expand a little bit on that UD table renaming? They mentioned I mentioned that it can be renamed, but is that something that happens in OneStream or in the model, or how's that go about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you saw as our base model, we had all the UD tables and their hierarchies. As part of the implementation, we'll work with you to identify which of those UD tables you want to include in the QuickLaunch data model. And we really encourage you to rename them to make them more business ready. So you may rename UD2 as product and UD3 as market. And one of the things we didn't cover as well is you can also decide which portions of the hierarchies you want to include in the QuickLaunch data model. You may have some alternate hierarchies that you have set up primarily for OneStream, but not necessarily for analytics. And we make it easy for you to identify which of those hierarchies you would like to exclude or hierarchy levels. And you can easily exclude those in the Power BI data model.
Okay, thank you, Marla. And just to the attendees, if you do have questions, make sure you can type them in that question and answer, and we'll get them. And if we don't get to them, we'll follow up with you later on. Here's another question though, Marla. And I'd said in it, but I didn't explain a lot. When the model gets changed, is that something that Preferred Strategies does, or is that who? If we're going to add stuff like Salesforce, how does that happen, and who does that?
That's a great question. We really want to partner with our customers and be whatever it is that they need as a resource. Some of our partners really use us as customers use us as an extension of their team. And ask us to go ahead and make those changes, add those additional data sources, add additional measures because they're busy with other projects. Or other customers of ours have a really strong single data model admin or even a full robust data science team. So we're here to help you in any way. But part of the reason why we call this Quick Launch is it's really just launching you to get you started. All of our customers make modifications to the model, add other data, other measures, and so forth.
Okay, thank you. The last question was back, and I know Ethan mentioned it, but the clarification is on the Power BI licenses needed. how does this work on the Power BI side of things?
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. In addition to the QuickLaunch licensing, there is some licensing that the customer needs. If you're here today, most likely you're already using Power BI in some capacity. You maybe have some Power BI Pro licenses, or you may be using it robustly across your organization, and you have some type of fabric or premium capacity. The way that we deploy our solution is to a workspace in a capacity license. The minimum level is premium per user licensing, which means everybody interacting with the model would need a premium per user license. If you already have pro licenses, it's just a $10 uplift per user on your per month for that premium per user license. Or if you're a larger organization and you have a fabric or premium capacity license already, we would just deploy these into a workspace on one of those capacities.
Thank you, Marla. So that's the last question I had in the panel. Unless one of the attendees wants to type in something quickly, that's our presentation for today. I don't see anything else, Ethan. So you want to wrap it up?
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.